Yeah, alright, back with the games. After all, I was already sold in this game. I mean, they showed an edgy Hedgehog. I was gonna buy it day one, no matter what. Over the years, Sonic has had a notorious history of having lackluster to poor remasters and re-releases. Whether it be the likes of Sonic Adventure DX, which introduced new bugs to Sonic Adventure, and even more if you count the later Steam edition, Sonic Adventure 2 also suffering from the same treatment with Adventure 2 Battle, and adding bad audio mixing to boot, to Sonic Origins, which, while I'll say is a great package now, after many post-launch updates, it launched with a massive amount of bugs and collision issues in all the games within the collection. Most infamously with the recent Sonic Colors Ultimate, the final product is almost in all regards worse than the Wii original, aside from the bump to 60 FPS. Massive amounts of new glitches were introduced, such as graphical bugs, textures flickering in and out, to messed up lighting, to objects not loading properly, to Seizure introducing bugs on the Switch. How the hell did that pass through QA? Sonic Colors Ultimate was more so the ultimate dumpster fire of Sonic remasters. With each new release of an older Sonic title being worse than the original, or having some caveats keeping it from being the definitive release, it almost felt like a big joke Sega was trying to pull on the fans, with them constantly trying to one-up themselves to see how they can make each game even more of a train wreck. So when it was announced earlier this year that Sonic Generations was going to be receiving the remaster treatment for modern consoles, needless to say, I and many others were probably going to be skeptical of how this would turn out. Doesn't mean I wasn't going to buy it though. At this point I'm a lost cause when it comes to this franchise. I'll be a shill for any day of the week. You see that? This is the moment I hit rock bottom. Known as Sonic X Shadow Generations, which sadly these two don't end up together like the name implies. The romance is just gonna have to live on in fanfiction. The game was said to be including some cool looking new content, mainly a new story starring Shadow embarking on his own adventure during the Sonic Generations main story, as well as minor tweaks and enhancements to that base game. I was still a little unsure of how this game would turn out, given the standards set by previous remaster efforts for the Blue Bar, but now that the game is out and I've had a bit more time to sit down and play both the Sonic and Shadow Generations portions of this game, I'm relieved to say that not only is this a really good remastering effort, but one of the best Sonic titles in recent years, being a great entry point for newcomers and an awesome experience for veterans of the franchise. While there's minor changes that I'd find questionable here and there in the package, for the first time in a long time, I feel like this is a Sonic remaster that I could recommend over the original with no ifs, ands, or buts included. And for those who have already played Sonic Generations, the new Shadow Generations portion is a worthwhile reason to pick up this remaster alone. So, let's pop this game in and show everyone what it's all about. Oh ha ha, the oldest trick in the YouTuber book. If the toast is here, where is the game? Ha ha! Well, that's for good. Originally released as the 20th anniversary title for Sonic the Hedgehog, Sonic Generations is a title that celebrates the history of the franchise up to that point in time, combining the gameplay style of the Sega Genesis titles with the current boost-style Sonic formula in a time-space warping adventure. The game has you playing as both the classic Genesis Sonic and his modern counterpart as they travel through levels from most of the mainline Sonic games up to that point, with their respective gameplay formulas intact. This game in its initial form was phenomenal! I remember playing it and the excitement I felt the first time experiencing this masterpiece like it was yesterday. Except, yesterday was, 13 years ago! Great way to make me feel like time is slipping away, for this game came out half a lifetime ago for me. Despite the long gap in time since its initial release, the original Sonic Generations holds up very well, minus some performance issues on consoles. Thankfully, with the remaster, Sega didn't try messing with the lighting, or tweaking the physics, or making unnecessary changes that would negatively impact the game like previous remastering efforts. They just kept it the same, but just added 4K 60 FPS as an upgrade to the original experience on modern consoles. Way to go! You didn't break anything! The only changes made to the base game are minor in this package, such as giving both Sonics the drop dash ability introduced in Sonic Mania, adding 3 hidden Shadow in each act of a zone as collectibles, and a new UI that shows which red ring collectibles are attained within the level. Aside from that, the gameplay is exactly the same as the original. In this game, you travel through levels from 3 different eras of Sonic: the classic era from the Genesis days, the Adventure era from the Dreamcast and PS2 era, and the modern era, which includes games from the Xbox 360 era of games. In the classic era, you travel through Green Hill from Sonic 1, Chemical Plant from Sonic 2, and Sky Sanctuary from Sonic 3 and Knuckles. Adventure Era has you going through Speed Highway from Sonic Adventure 1, City Escape from Adventure 2, and Seaside Hill from Sonic Heroes. Finally, Modern has you going through Crisis City from Sonic 06, Rooftop Run from Sonic Unleashed, and Planet Wisp from Sonic Colors. The main joy of this game is playing through these new renditions of past level themes, with new routes and areas to travel through than the original takes on these levels. Being able to blaze through Genesis zones with modern Sonic gameplay is exhilarating and felt very fresh at the time, as well as being able to travel through modern zones as the original version of Sonic from the Genesis era. Almost all of the levels found within Sonic Generations are top tier design wise. Well, except for maybe Planet Wisp, it's certainly the weakest level in the package for me at least. The levels in Sonic Generations are highly replayable, being a blast to play through over and over again. I guess you could say that they're a Sonic Blast. Oh, is that a little bit of an unnecessary reference to a game that doesn't even matter in this game review? Almost like a change I'll be discussing later in this game. You're encouraged to learn the ins and outs of all the levels to complete them faster in order to get the S ranks, and also find the red rings to unlock bonus art and music that you can play during level replays. Plus, upon beating the game, you can compete in online rankings to see your times on the leaderboards. There's also plenty of challenges you can play for each zone that unlock even more art and music in the game, as well as boss fights as you progress along the game. All the bosses, aside from the final boss, are borrowed from past Sonic titles, such as the Death Egg Robot from Sonic 2, Perfect Chaos from Sonic Adventure, and the Egg Dragoon from Sonic Unleashed, but each one of these plays differently from their initial appearances to make them feel distinct. The only parts of the game that kinda stink are the story, which is just mainly an excuse to bring the past levels back with no depth to the plot whatsoever, plus the final level and boss fights kinda fall flat. While the ending of the game hasn't been fixed in this remaster, an attempt was made to try to make the story a little better in the form of a rewrite of the game's script, but to me is a bit hit and miss. The base story of Sonic Generations takes place during Sonic's birthday party, where all of a sudden this monster known as the Time Eater captures Sonic and his friends, trapping him in a timeless white void. In order to free Sonic's friends, both Sonics must run fast through the zones to restore them to their natural state, as well as rescue their friends. Along the way, they gather the Chaos Emeralds to take on the Time Eater with, and shocker! Eggman's behind the phenomenon the whole time! Who could have seen that coming? In order to defeat him, both Sonics go super, defeat the Time Eater, and restore time and space to its original state. A lot of the dialogue in the original game was leaning more towards jokey Saturday morning cartoon humor, with the characters also written to where they don't fully recognize some of the areas they travel through. This honestly made sense in the original context of the game's release, where areas like Green Hill and Chemical Plant didn't really appear in any games after their initial debuts. But post-Generations, however, these areas became staples that constantly show up uninvited to the party. With this current context, it would be strange for these characters not to recognize these areas, since when are they not there at this point? So, the rewritten dialogue plays into this, having the characters remember more of their past adventures more vividly than in the original script. However, some of these rewrites come off as blatant fan servicey schlock. The amount of time they throw back and reference past events and things when it doesn't even fit with what's currently going on in the story makes us all feel very pandering to hardcore fans. The worst example I can think of is in the original game, when both tales explain what's going on. Instead of that original line where Sonic asks how all the time travel shenanigans is happening, Sonic instead feels the need to make the deep cut references to bring up the time stones that appeared in one game 31 years ago and haven't appeared since.
Traveling through time, Sonic!
Without the time stones?
Yes, Sonic, without the freaking time stones. You know, the thing that was mentioned 31 years ago and hasn't been used since, so doesn't fit with the plot of the story at hand? Hell, in Sonic's CD, Sonic never even used the time stones to travel through time. He used signposts that had future and past written on them, so I didn't even bring those up. Oh wait, they don't add anything to the story at hand, so why bring it up? Goodness! Style writing irked me a bit, just like it did in Sonic Frontiers, which was also written by the new writer, Ian Flynn. In the case of Sonic Frontiers, I was a little lenient since we were coming off a decade of Sonic titles that felt like they were pretending the past didn't even happen. So kind of validating that these events from past games did happen again, I kind of understand. But here I don't think it quite fits as well in the game where his whole premise is showcasing firsthand the past of Sonic. So why do we need more references to past games in a game that's just a big reference to the past in and of itself? I don't hate his writing, and I still think it's better than what the previous writers cranked out, but Ian's writing feels like it fits better for a more serialized, month-to-month comic series. The games usually tell self-contained stories that can be taken on their own without knowledge of the past, so constantly referencing outside the current story's scope just feels a little out of place. Despite some gripes with writing, I would say that the remastered version of Sonic Generations is an excellent way to experience the game for the first time, or to re-experience it if you played it before in the past. For the first time, I feel like I can recommend a Sonic re-release without including any asterisks like it's good or but has bugs or it's fine but the graphics look worse than the original release. This is just a straight up great way to experience Sonic Generations. That's it. But that's only half the package here. There's still the all-new Shadow Generations portion of the game to go through. Shadow Generations is essentially the follow-up to the 2005 Shadow the Hedgehog game, which was previously the only standalone title the character had. Shadow Generations builds upon the story of its last game, bringing back the Black Arms aliens from that game and their leader, Black Doom, as the villain of the story. If you're unfamiliar with the backstory of Shadow, there is an included prologue video that gives you a bit of a rundown of the character and his story thus far. To abbreviate though, Shadow was created to be the ultimate life form by Eggman's grandfather, Jerry Robotnik, as a weapon for the military of the Sonic series, Gun, and as a way to create a cure for an illness inflicting Gerald's granddaughter, Maria. In order to make Shadow a reality, Black Doom gave some of his blood to Gerald to help in the process of creating Shadow. Eventually the military got involved, gave the Glicky to Maria, and captured him and Gerald, imprisoning them.
Nerf! Maria!
Eventually Shadow is freed 50 years later by Eggman. He does some bad things, he does some good things. He loses his memory for a time. His friends never acknowledge the fact that he fell back to the planet from outer space and lived to tell a tale, fights off the Black Arms aliens and Shadow the Hedgehog while also regaining his memories, and moves on from his past. From then on, Shadow's character development had came to a conclusion, and no future titles really grew or fleshed him out further. Until now! The story of Shadow Generations starts with Shadow aboard the Space Colony Ark, a research station which he was originally created in, searching for a life form detected by Gun. Upon investigating, Shadow comes across the returning Black Doom, who plans to build his power back up and conquer the world once and for all. As this happens, the Time Eater shows up, which engulfs Shadow and traps him in the White Void world just like Sonic and the rest of his friends. In this world, Shadow pursues after Black Doom, unlocking new powers that tap into his Black Arms DNA along the way. As part of this quest, Shadow goes through different levels from his past, and 2 from the future, and only one of these actually being a place he's been to before. Look, Sonic Team's been strapped for time and cash in these recent entries, so cut them some slack, guys. The level list this time around consists of Space Colony Ark from Sonic Adventure 2 and Shadow, Rail Canyon from Sonic Heroes, Kingdom Valley from Sonic 06, Sunset Heights from Sonic Forces, Chaos Island from Sonic Frontiers, and finally Radical Highway from Sonic Adventure 2. Again, this is basically becoming Shadow's Green Hill here. Each zone has 2 acts, with the first being 3D and the second being 2D, with the exception of Radical Highway being all 3D levels. In terms of the controls, this game feels very different from how base Sonic Generations controls, building out the framework of Sonic Frontiers' cyberspace stages, while reincorporating features to fit more in line with Generations' playstyle. The max movement speed of Shadow is slower than the Sonic Gens, but controlling Shadow is a lot easier as a result, making more precise platforming feel much better. Shadow also has his own unique abilities for his levels that help set him apart as well. The first ability in your arsenal is Chaos Control, which allows you to freeze time temporarily and travel along specific Chaos Control paths. Shadow also has access to the Doom Spears, which can stun enemies and activate switches in levels, Doom Surf, which activates the moment you hit water, allowing for aquatic traversal, Doom Blast, which allows Shadow to launch Black Arms aliens up and aim them at distant objects, teleporting to them afterwards, Doom Morph, which turns Shadow into an alien squid, letting him swim through purple goop and swing on designated spears in the level, and finally, the Doom Wing, the final upgrade which acts as this game's version of Supersonic. You can activate this power once you obtain 50 rings, and it allows you to fly through the air and maintain the height you begin boosting at. All these powers allow for unique ways of tackling the levels ahead of you, making the levels in Shadow Generations really stand out compared to Sonic Generations' selection. I will say though that the Doom Wing ability is a little too broken for my liking, so thankfully, when playing levels, they have 2 sets of times for playthroughs, with and without the access to the Doom Wing ability. These levels, just like base Generations, are very replayable and are satisfying to go through to find all the secrets and hidden paths throughout and to get the fastest times. Unlike Sonic Generations though, these levels really feel like they have way more opportunities to skip segments of levels or creative alternative routes you can come up with through experimentation, especially in the 3D levels. This is in large part due to a technique the Sonic community has called the Spear Glide. By constantly tossing Doom Spears while airborne, Shadow will maintain his forward momentum without air drag like with a typical jump, allowing for a creative routing of these levels in sequence breaks. It ain't fancy, but I like it. Clever uses of Doom Blast with knowledge of how the level plays out can also allow for some satisfying new routes, making these levels some of the most fun I've had playing Boost Formula Sonic levels in recent years. It brings back the feel of playing Sonic Adventure, where you can pull off similar sorts of skips and tricks. The level design of Shadow Generations feels like the perfect mix of Sonic Adventure's style gameplay with the Boost gameplay. Even the 2D levels are very exciting to play as well. be more focused on quick reaction time, and feel a lot like the 2D segments in Sonic Unleashed. They aren't as fun to play as the 3D levels, but they're still amazing in their own right. There are also challenges for each level in the game, just like Sonic Gens, but unlike that game, all of them are required to be completed in order to beat the main game and challenge all the bosses in the game. Speaking of the bosses, the selection here is really good and narratively fit well with fighting Shadow. First is the Bio Lizard, which was the original prototype of Shadow, Metal Overlord, which is the ultimate form of Metal Sonic, and Mephiles, whose form is created from copying Shadow, and finally the confrontation with Black Doom at the end of the game, which I won't be showing to keep from spoiling the end. Most of the fights play pretty well and can be quite fun, but the weakest link here is Mephiles, who feels a bit underwhelming compared to the rest of the boss battles. Dialogue's really good though, in the fight. Outside the levels and challenges, you have the open zone hub world. Just like with Sonic Frontiers, you have a fully explorable hub, filled with secrets and goodies, in this game's case being music, artwork, and story lore for Shadow. Most of these are contained in locked chests, which can be unlocked with the medals you find hidden within the main acts and challenge levels. This adds a little bit more substance to the game and allows for a nice open area to relax in before jumping back into the main levels. Overall, Shadow Generations is a really fun time too, but if you're just going into the game, playing only the bare minimum to just experience the story, the runtime is only going to be about 4 to 5 hours tops, which is a little disappointing. But performing runs of levels and getting all the unlockables in Shadow Generations brings the value of the package way up to me. Combining both Sonic and Shadow Generations together and being sold at a $50 price point, this game is an absolute steal for a Sonic game. The package contains 2 of the best 3D Sonic experiences, all at a reasonable price. If you ever wanted to give the Sonic franchise a try, this is a great jumping in point for the series. Or if you just missed out on the original Sonic Generations, this is a fantastic way to play that game. Overall, I definitely recommend this game and you should definitely check it out if you're into Sonic. So that was Sonic X Shadow Generations. You know, seeing Shadow the Hedgehog all the time in this game has really made me reminisce on my past, you know. Back when I used to be an angsty, edgy goth teen. You know, I think it's time for me to try a new look. We'll go to barber later today and see if we can rekindle some of that teenage angst with my appearance. So, let's see what the results are. Well, I'm no angsty teen, but I look like Steve from Blue's Clues.